The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon, casting a soft golden glow across the quiet streets of Greenfield Heights. The neighborhood, known for its perfectly manicured lawns, pristine sidewalks, and towering oak trees, was still asleep. The only sound that broke the silence was the rhythmic pounding of sneakers against pavement. 16-year-old Mia Rodriguez loved this time of day. It was her escape, her sanctuary. With the pressures of high school, college applications, and her parents' high expectations weighing heavy on her shoulders, running was the one thing that kept her grounded. It was her moment of freedom, a time when she could breathe and just be herself. Mia had been running this route for months, ever since her family moved into the neighborhood. She knew every twist and turn, every crack in the sidewalk, every house with a barking dog. She felt safe here, or at least she had until this morning. As she rounded the corner on a maple lane, she noticed something unusual. A black SUV was parked at the end of the street, its engine idling softly. Mia didn't think much of it at first, maybe a neighbor heading out early for work. But as she got closer, the SUV's headlights flicked on, and the vehicle began to move slowly toward her. Mia's heart rate quickened, but she told herself she was being paranoid. She kept running, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. But then the SUV sped up, cutting her off. The door swung open, and a man in a dark suit stepped out. "Mia Rodriguez?" he asked, his voice cold and authoritative. Mia stopped in her tracks, her chest heaving. "Yes," she replied, her voice trembling. "You're under arrest for trespassing," the man said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. Mia's eyes widened in shock. "What? This is a public street. I'm just running." The man didn't respond. He grabbed her arm and snapped the cuffs around her wrists before she could protest further. Mia's mind raced. This had to be a mistake. She hadn't done anything wrong. But as she was shoved into the back of the SUV, she realized this was no mistake. Someone had targeted her. Greenfield Heights was governed by the Greenfield Heights Homeowners Association, HOA, a powerful organization that prided itself on maintaining the neighborhood's prestige. The HOA had strict rules that dictated everything from the color of your front door to the type of flowers you could plant in your garden. And at the helm of this organization was Evelyn Harper, a woman who ruled with an iron fist. Evelyn had been the HOA president for over a decade, and during that time, she had turned Greenfield Heights into her personal kingdom. She had a reputation for being ruthless, and she wasn't afraid to use her power to enforce her will. If someone broke the rules, they paid the price literally. Fines were handed out like candy, and if you couldn't pay, you were threatened with legal action. But Evelyn's power went beyond just enforcing rules. She had connections with the local police, the city council, and even the mayor. She knew how to manipulate the system to get what she wanted, and she wasn't above using those connections to intimidate anyone who dared to challenge her. So when Evelyn received a complaint from one of her loyal board members about a suspicious teenager running through the neighborhood early in the morning, she didn't hesitate to act. She called her contacts at the police department and demanded that they handle the situation. And handle it they did. Mia sat in the back of the SUV, her hands cuffed in front of her, her mind racing. She couldn't believe this was happening. She had been arrested for running? It didn't make any sense. She tried to stay calm, but the fear was overwhelming. What if they didn't believe her? What if they kept her in jail? What would her parents think? The SUV pulled into the police station, and Mia was led inside. The officers were cold and dismissive, treating her like a criminal. They took her mugshot, fingerprinted her, and then threw her into a holding cell. The cell was cold and sterile, with a single bench and a flickering fluorescent light. Mia sat down, her legs trembling, and tried to make sense of what was happening. She thought about her parents. Her father, a respected federal judge, would know what to do. But how could she even contact him? She didn't have her phone, and the officers hadn't given her a chance to make a call. She felt completely alone. Hours passed, and Mia's fear turned to anger. This wasn't right. She hadn't done anything wrong. She was just a kid, running in her own neighborhood. How could they do this to her? Finally, the door to the holding cell creaked open, and an officer stepped inside. "You're free to go," he said, unlocking the cuffs. Mia looked up, confused. What? Why? The officer didn't answer. He just gestured for her to follow him. Mia stood up, her legs stiff and shaky, and followed him out of the cell. As she walked down the hallway, she saw her father standing at the end, his face a mask of fury. Judge Daniel Rodriguez was a tall, imposing man with a reputation for being fair but firm. He had spent his career upholding the law, and he wasn't about to let anyone, especially a corrupt HOA, break it. "Dad," Mia said, her voice trembling. Daniel pulled her into a tight hug. "It's okay, Mia. I'm here now. Let's go home." Daniel Rodriguez was not a man to be trifled with. As a federal judge, he had seen his fair share of corruption, but this was personal. His daughter had been arrested for no reason other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he was going to make sure that those responsible paid for it. As soon as they got home, Daniel got to work. He made a few phone calls, and within hours, he had the entire story. The HOA had called the police, claiming that Mia was trespassing. They had even gone so far as to say that she was a threat to the community. It was a blatant abuse of power, and Daniel was determined to put an end to it. He started by filing a formal complaint with the police department, demanding an investigation into the officers who had arrested Mia. Then he turned his attention to the HOA. He knew that Evelyn Harper was the one behind this, and he was going to make sure she faced the full force of the law. But Daniel wasn't just going to stop at Evelyn. He was going to take down the entire HOA. He had seen firsthand how these organizations could become corrupt, and he was determined to make sure that Greenfield Heights was no exception. The next morning, the story broke. The local news was filled with headlines about the Greenfield Heights scandal. A teenage girl had been arrested for jogging in her own neighborhood, and the HOA was at the center of the controversy. Social media exploded with outrage. People were furious that something like this could happen in their community. Hashtags like the Justice for Mia and the HOA abuse started trending, and the story quickly went viral. Evelyn Harper tried to do damage control. She issued a statement claiming that the arrest had been a misunderstanding and that the HOA had been acting in the best interest of the community. But no one was buying it. The public had already made up their minds, and Evelyn was the VY lane. The HOA board was in full panic mode. They knew that if they didn't do something fast, their entire organization could be destroyed. They held an emergency meeting, but it was clear that they were out of options. Evelyn had gone too far, and now they were all paying the price. As the scandal grew, Evelyn Harper's life began to unravel. The once powerful HOA president was now a pariah. Her neighbors, who had once respected her, now avoided her like the plague. Reporters camped out on her lawn, demanding answers. And the lawsuits. They were coming in fast and furious. Evelyn tried to fight back. She hired the best lawyers money could buy, but it was no use. The EVY Denke against her was overwhelming. She had abused her power, and now she was going to pay for it. The final blow came when the HOA board voted to remove her as president. They issued a public statement, distancing themselves from her and claiming that she had acted alone. It was a desperate attempt to save themselves, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Evelyn was forced to resign, and within weeks, the HOA was dissolved. The residents of Greenfield Heights had had enough. They were tired of living under the thumb of a corrupt organization, and they were ready to take back their community. With the HOA gone, Greenfield Heights began to change. The strict rules that had once governed every aspect of life in the neighborhood were lifted, and for the first time in years, people felt free to express themselves. Mia Rodriguez went back to her morning runs, but this time, it was different. She no longer felt like she was being watched or judged. She ran with a sense of freedom she had never known before. As for Judge Daniel Rodriguez, he had accomplished what he set out to do. He had taken down a corrupt organization and ensured that justice was served. But more importantly, he had protected his daughter and shown her that no one was above the law. The story of Greenfield Heights became a cautionary tale, a reminder of what can happen when power goes unchecked. And for Mia, it was a lesson she would never forget. She had stood up to injustice, and in doing so, she had found her voice. One morning, As Mia jogged past the old HOA office, she slowed to a stop. The building, once the symbol of power and control, now stood empty and abandoned. The sign had been taken down, the windows were dark, and the parking lot was overgrown with weeds. Mia stood there for a moment, her hands on her hips, her breath steady from the run. Then, slowly, a smirk spread across her lips. She tilted her head, exhaled, and muttered just loud enough for the wind to carry it away. "Guess I own the place now." And with that, she turned and continued her run, the crisp morning air filling her lungs as she moved effortlessly through the streets of Greenfield Heights. The neighborhood was finally free, and so was she. The dissolution of the Greenfield Heights HOA sent shockwaves through the community. For years, the association had been a symbol of control and order, but now it was gone, and the neighborhood was left to navigate its newfound freedom. Some residents embraced the change, painting their houses in bold colors and planting gardens that defied the old rules. Others, however, felt a sense of unease. Without the HOA, who would maintain the neighborhood standards? Who would ensure that Greenfield Heights remained the pristine community they had moved into? Mia Rodriguez, now a local hero, found herself at the center of this new chapter. Her story had inspired many, but it had also made her a target for those who blamed her for the HOA's downfall. Some neighbors whispered behind her back, accusing her of causing chaos. Others openly thanked her, seeing her as the catalyst for change. Mia tried to stay out of the drama, focusing on her schoolwork and her runs, but it was hard to ignore the tension that now hung over Greenfield Heights. Meanwhile, Evelyn Harper had disappeared from public view. After her resignation, she had sold her house and moved out of state, leaving behind the neighborhood she had once ruled. But her legacy lingered. The lawsuits against her were still pending, and the media continued to dig in her past, uncovering more instances of abuse of power. Evelyn's name had become synonymous with corruption, and she would spend the rest of her life trying to escape it. Just when it seemed like Greenfield Heights was settling into its new normal, a new threat emerged. A real estate development company, Greenfield Properties, had been quietly buying up properties in the neighborhood. Their plan was to turn Greenfield Heights into a gated community, complete with luxury homes, a private golf course, and a new HOA that would be even more restrictive than the last. The residents were dead. Some saw the development as an opportunity to increase property values and attract wealthier homeowners. Others feared it would destroy the sense of community they had worked so hard to rebuild. Mia, now more aware of the dangers of unchecked power, was firmly in the latter camp. She knew that if Greenfield Properties succeeded, the neighborhood would once again be under the control of a powerful few. Mia decided to take action. She organized a town hall meeting, inviting all the residents to discuss the proposed development. The turnout was overwhelming. People packed into the community center, their voices rising in heated debate. Mia stood at the front of the room, her heart pounding as she addressed the crowd. "We've already fought to free ourselves from one oppressive system," she said, her voice steady. "Are we really going to let another one take its place? Greenfield Heights belongs to all of us, not just a select few. We need to stand together and protect what we've built." Her words resonated with many, but not everyone was said. The debate raged on for hours, with no clear resolution in sight. In the end, the residents agreed to form a committee to negotiate with Greenfield Properties. Mia was elected as one of its members, a role she accepted with both pride and trepidation. The negotiations with Greenfield Properties were tense. The developers were slick and persuasive, promising to bring wealth and prestige to the neighborhood. But Mia and the other committee members stood their ground, demanding that any new development respect the rights and freedoms of the current residents. The battle dragged on for months, with both sides refusing to back down. Greenfield Properties tried to sway public opinion with flashy presentations and promises of financial incentives. Mia and her allies countered with grassroots campaigns, rallying the community to resist the developers' plans. As the fight intensified, Mia found herself growing more confident in her role as a leader. She had started this journey as a scared teenager, arrested for simply running in her own neighborhood. Now, she was a voice for change, standing up to powerful forces and fighting for what she believed in. But the pressure was taking its toll. Mia's grades began to slip, and her parents worried about the toll the battle was taking on her. Her father, Judge Rodriguez, offered his support, but he also urged her to remember her own well-being. "You've already done so much, Mia," he said one evening as they sat together in the Lee VYing room. "Don't forget to take care of yourself. This fight isn't just about Greenfield Heights, it's about you too." Mia nodded, but she knew she couldn't stop now. The stakes were too high. The turning point came when Mia and the committee uncovered EVY denke of shady dealings between Greenfield Properties and local officials. The developers have been bribing city council members to fast-track their plans, bypassing zoning laws and environmental regulations. When the news broke, it sparked outrage across the community and beyond. The scandal forced Greenfield Properties to withdraw their proposal. The developer's reputation was in tatters, and the city council members involved were forced to resign. It was a hard-fought VY Tory, but it was worth it. Greenfield Heights had been saved not just from a new HOA, but from the corruption that had threatened to destroy it. The residents celebrated with a block party, the first of its kind in years. The streets were filled with laughter, music, and the smell of grilled food. For the first time in a long time, Greenfield Heights felt like a true community. Mia stood on the sidelines, watching the festive VY ties with a smile. She had played a key role in this VY Tory, but she knew it wasn't just her doing. It was the result of everyone coming together, standing up for what they believed in. With the threat of Greenfield Properties behind them, the residents of Greenfield Heights began to rebuild their neighborhood in a way that reflected their values. They formed a new association, but this one was different. It was a true community organization, run by volunteers, and focused on collaboration rather than control. The old HOA office was repurposed into a community center, a place where people could gather, share ideas, and work together to make Greenfield Heights a better place. Mia continued her morning runs, but now she wasn't alone. Other residents joined her, inspired by her courage and determination. Together, they ran through the streets of Greenfield Heights, their footsteps a symbol of the neighborhood's resilience. As for Mia, she had grown through the experience. She had found her voice and her purpose. She knew that the fight for justice and freedom was never truly over, but she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Years later, Mia Rodriguez returned to Greenfield Heights as a young lawyer, specializing in civil rights and community advocacy. The neighborhood had changed in many ways, but its spirit remained the same. The community center was Thrive VYing, and the streets were filled with the sounds of children playing and neighbors chatting. Mia stood in front of the old HOA office, now a VY brand hub of active VY tie. She thought back to the day she had been arrested, the fear and anger she had felt. That moment had changed her life, setting her on a path she never could have imagined. As she turned to leave, a young girl ran past her, laughing as she chased a ball. Mia smiled, knowing that the legacy of Greenfield Heights and her own would live on in the next generation. And with that, she walked away, ready to face the future with the same courage and determination that had brought her this far. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this VY Deo with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next VY Deo.